Have you ever had that moment, where you're looking for something important, like a passport maybe, or an insurance policy, and it's like, it's completely vanished. It's like everything's just scattered all over the place. Digital files, you can't seem to track, and it can be so frustrating, right?
Yeah.
You just want to feel organized, prepared.
Yeah.
Like you've got things handled. Today, we're going to dive deep into a story that it really throws this everyday problem into a whole new light. It's a situation, honestly, I think none of us would want to go through ourselves.
Definitely. We're looking at the Sharma family and what happened after Rajesh passed away suddenly. He was the head of the family, the main provider. And, we have these excerpts detailing not only the emotional toll it took on them, but also the massive logistical challenges they had to face. It's a real wake-up call for all of us about what can happen when things aren't really in order. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And what we want you to walk away with today is a real grasp of what the Sharma family went through. By looking at their experience, we can learn some really important lessons about being prepared and how much of a difference that can make for your peace of mind and the security of your family. So let's get into it. Rajesh Sharma, by all accounts, was an incredibly organized person. He handled everything for his family. Girls insurance, all the financial stuff, even those digital passwords that are so crucial these days. He was the one who had it all under control.
And then suddenly, out of the blue, everything changed. Rajesh had a heart attack, totally unexpected, and passed away. The impact on his wife Priya and their kids, Reena and Arav, was just enormous emotionally, of course. But on top of that deep grief, they were hit with this overwhelming feeling of not even knowing where to begin with sorting out Rajesh's affairs. They were completely unprepared for that practical side of things while dealing with such a huge loss. It's interesting, how quickly the focus has to shift to these logistical issues, but at the same time, their emotional state makes it so hard to deal with them effectively. It's like being completely lost at sea. And this is where the sheer amount of paperwork and how disorganized it was really became a major problem. The sources talk about Priya being faced with mountains of documents everywhere. We're talking about the deed to their house, the details of their investments, all those different stocks and bonds, insurance policies, years and years of tax returns, and of course the thing we all deal with now, a whole mess of online passwords for everything, banking, social media, you name it.
Yeah, Priya's experience of digging through drawers and files, finding bits and pieces of information here and there, some documents missing entirely. I mean, it's something that I think a lot of us can relate to on some level, even if it's not as tragic. Not having that central organized system put her at a huge disadvantage right from the start. It really makes you think how easily this can happen, right? One person manages everything, and if there's no clear system, it's like all that knowledge, those crucial documents become almost impossible to find when they're needed the most. Absolutely. And to make things even more complicated, there was Rajesh's will, the document that's supposed to make everything clear about his wishes. It turned out to be really vague, not very specific at all. So instead of providing guidance, it actually created more confusion and even the possibility of arguments later on. The Sharma family situation really highlights something we see all the time. People using those generic will templates or not updating their wills after big life changes. A big takeaway here for everyone listening is how important it is to get professional legal advice to create a will that's really tailored to your situation, legally sound and updated regularly.
Exactly. So Priya's struggling with this unclear will, and then she has to deal with all these institutions, banks, insurance companies, government agencies. The excerpts describe it as a real bureaucratic nightmare. The banks, following their usual procedures, froze all the accounts to protect Rajesh's assets until the legal beneficiaries were figured out. But trying to unfreeze them was like navigating a maze of paperwork. Documents that were confusing requirements that weren't clear, each institution sending her in a different direction.
And the insurance company didn't seem to be much help either. They just kept asking for more and more documents, some that Priya had no idea existed, and giving what the sources call opaque responses when she asked about their investments. I mean, that sounds unbelievably frustrating when you're already going through so much.
It's sad, but the Sharma's experience isn't unusual. It shows how much we need more standardization and empathy from these systems when they're dealing with families who are grieving. For our listeners, it's a reminder that dealing with these processes often takes a lot of patience and persistence, even if you are prepared. And then you've got government agencies, each one with its own strict rules about formatting and often not giving clear, easy to understand guidance. It's just hurdle after hurdle for Priya.
And on top of all that, she was told to hire a lawyer to help her with the whole estate process. And of course, that meant paying those really expensive legal fees, which just added to the financial burden they were already under.
Yeah, if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it's clear how that initial shock and grief turned into a very real financial strain. Priya had always relied on Rajesh to manage the family finances, so suddenly she couldn't access the money they needed. Their savings were shrinking and they were struggling to pay for everyday things as well as those unexpected legal costs. It really highlights how important it is for families to have a shared understanding of their finances.
It's a scary thought, isn't it? Dealing with a huge loss and at the same time worrying about how you're going to pay the bills.
It is, and unfortunately, the financial pressure and the confusion about the will started to affect the family dynamic. The excerpts describe tension building between Priya and her kids Reena and Arav, uncertainty about who would inherit what, questions about Rajesh's intentions, even a breakdown of trust. It was a terrible outcome of not having clear plans in place. The emotional pain of losing Rajesh was made so much worse by all the logistical and financial stress.
So the very people who should have been supporting each other through this incredibly difficult time were instead dealing with conflict and what's described as a really toxic environment. Makes you wonder if there are any tools or systems out there that could help families avoid this kind of situation altogether.
That's the key question, and it brings us to the introduction of Smarana in the story. Smarana is presented as a possible solution to all the chaos that the Sharma family experienced. It's described as this centralized, secure platform designed to store all those important documents and information that gave Priya so much trouble. It's like a digital vault for everything crucial. You can keep all your passwords, insurance details, banking info, real estate stuff, medical records, and even digital copies of your will, all organized in one place. And you control who has access, trusted family members, maybe even legal professionals.
So it's having everything in one secure, easily accessible spot. They emphasize features like strong security with encryption, maybe even that really strong end-to-end encryption or bank-level security protocols. Then easy access for family members. You choose tools to keep everything organized, secure password storage and features to make managing a will less complicated.
Exactly. If Rajesh had used a platform like Smarana, Priya wouldn't have had to frantically search for those scattered papers. She'd have a clear, organized view of their finances, immediate access to important documents, and most likely a much better understanding of what Rajesh wanted for his estate. You can see how that would have made a huge difference for her. Instead of feeling lost and overwhelmed, she'd have a roadmap, a sense of control, and the ability to focus on grieving and healing instead of being bogged down by all those logistical nightmares. It really creates a picture of a much more stable and secure future for her and her children during such a painful time.
It's a striking difference. And as the excerpts highlight, the Sharma family situation, though incredibly sad, isn't unique. The sources mention some pretty shocking statistics, actually. They say a huge number of people don't have a will, and even fewer have a clear plan for their digital assets, which are so important in our online world. This isn't some rare problem. It's a widespread lack of preparedness that leaves tons of families in really vulnerable positions.
So Smarana isn't just about simplifying paperwork, it's about real peace of mind. It's knowing that your loved ones won't have to deal with this extra layer of stress and confusion when they're already going through so much grief. That's the real value it offers. It gives people the power to be proactive, to protect their families, and make sure their wishes and their legacy are preserved clearly and securely. And it ties right back to what you were saying about wanting to gain knowledge quickly and completely. Understanding these potential problems, as we've seen with the Sharmas, and knowing that there are practical solutions available is so important.
It really underscores how crucial being prepared is. The Sharma family's journey is such a powerful example of how not having a plan can make the emotional and logistical burdens during a time of loss so much heavier.
And a solution like Smarana tackles those core issues head-on. The disorganization of important information, the difficulty of accessing it when you need it most, and the lack of clarity around essential documents and wishes. It gives you a centralized, secure way to manage everything that truly matters.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it leaves you, our listener, with a really important question to consider. How prepared are you? Have you thought about where your important documents are, who could access them if needed, and have you clearly laid out your wishes for the future? Taking the time to create a solid plan for your loved ones isn't just about being practical. It's a real act of caring that can give them so much peace and security during their most vulnerable moments. What steps can you take today to make sure your important information isn't scattered to the wind and that your loved ones are protected?